What's that? I don't have a watch on my hand, but I know it's 2021, and the fact that we've got only a single all-electric estate on the market. Yes, that's correct. The MG5 EV has a unique position, and it has done for a numerous amount of years. Now, wait a second, the MG5 EV is brand new. It came in late 2020. How can it have a unique position for numerous amounts of years? Well, that's simply because SAIC Motor, the group owner of MG Motor and a variety of different brands, which is based in China, has been producing the Regenerative i5 for a numerous amount of years and has been selling its all-electric estate in the Chinese market. The MG5 EV is the first that's come to the European market, or at least in the UK, should we say. Now, the car itself costs £24,500, and the exclusive model, which we've got on review over here, is £27,000. Now, if you take into consideration, that's one of the cheapest all-electric EVs that you can find on the market. In this review, we're going to be looking at if it's actually worth your money and if it's something that you should be considering. Now, if you'd want a detailed review that goes into the different various trim levels and indeed the different options that you get, do check out our written review. It'll be down in the description below, and also down there you'll find links to our social media platforms. So if you're on Instagram or Twitter, we'd very much appreciate a follow. It'll allow you to keep up with the latest news and reviews from TotallyEV. So to kick things off, let's talk about the exterior design, and personally I'm not too much of a fan of it. There's the droopy design of the bonnet and the large wheel arches which overhang a little bit too high off the 16-inch alloys. Indeed, the car has these alloy rims and they can't be changed, and as a result you've got a pretty large tyre wall. Now, you might disagree with my opinion, because in fact I asked a question to our Instagram followers and it was pretty much a 50-50% split between people liking it or disliking it. Now, on the plus side, I do like the rear of the car. The chrome styling gives it a little bit of extra style, and there's really nothing to be taken away from the tail light design either. Now, moving inside the cabin, the same could be said. It's a little bit bland, but it is extremely functional. The steering wheel, for example, has got physical buttons which are comprehensively laid out. And yes, you still have physical volume wheels and knobs located throughout the cabin. So for example, by the center console, you've got physical climate controls and you've got physical buttons to access certain parts of the infotainment system. There is also a rotary dial, which is very intuitive, very much like the MG ZS EV, allowing you to go into drive, neutral or reverse, and if you press on it, it'll go into park. It's just really intuitive, really. There's also a couple of levers over here which we'll touch upon in a little bit when it comes to driving. Now, as for the instrument cluster, it's got a 7-inch display which can't be customized, but that said, it provides you all the basic information. Furthermore, there's two physical dials, where on the left hand side you've got speedometer, on the right hand side you've got a power indicator, allowing you a quick glance at your speed and of course your power to see how efficiently you're driving. As for the infotainment system, it has an 8-inch display which also supports Android Auto and Apple CarPlay. The menu system is very easy to get your head around, and the options are again very well laid out. The thing is, however, there is a few software, I'm not saying glitches, but things that I could see potentially being improved via firmware update. Take, for example, Android Auto. When you're using it, let's say on Google Maps, you can't zoom in and out via pinch and zoom, which seems a little bit odd given the fact you can do so via the built-in navigation systems. This is definitely not the case with Android Auto and other vehicles. And also, when you were to plug in the vehicle to charge and unlock the car and come into the car, what you'll see is some Chinese being displayed on the instrument cluster. Very much likes of the Regenerative i5 coming through with the MG5 EV. But again, I think these things can be addressed in a future firmware update and are very small points to make. Now, to connect up your phone to the car system, there's two USB ports located at the front alongside a 12-volt socket which will provide additional power to, let's say, a dash cam. Speaking of which, if you're looking for a best dash cam roundup or you're looking to buy a dash cam, do check out our roundup down in the description below. Now, at the back of the vehicle there are two USB ports which are on the exclusive model only. If you go for the Excite model, you won't have any USB ports. Now, if you'd prefer to connect wirelessly, the car supports Bluetooth, of course. It's limited to the SBC codec, and that is because if you want to play back, let's say, your favorite music. Now, the car has a 6-speaker audio system with 3D sound, no matter which trim level you go for. Now, if you'd want a detailed review of the sound system, do check it out upon your pop-up banner or in the description below, where we've got a dedicated review on the audio system. What I will say in a nutshell is that it's decent for a stock system, although isn't going to really set alight audiophiles' dreams. Now in terms of storage space, I think it's really well thought out, specifically at the front of the cabin. There's actually two small little slits by the center console allowing you to place your smartphone. So be it if you're connected wirelessly or via wired connection, you can stow away your smartphone, actually two smartphones, one for each of the front occupants. Now there's two cup holder spaces, a little place to put some loose change, or let's say the key fob, and a little storage compartment within the armrest. As for the front doors, you can fit 500ml bottles with ease, and a large size purse or wallet as well if you so wish. Now the back of the cabin, the rear doors also have some storage, although it's a little bit hard to access. What isn't hard to access, however, is the boot. Now the boot capacity, you've got 464 litres of usable storage space, and if you were to pop down the seats, you've got 1,456 litres, which ups the BMW 330e Touring, for example, or the MG ZS EV. The only thing to consider over here is that you haven't got a flat boot floor, where the boot floor is slightly down and there's a little step between the rear seats. But still, there's one of the key selling points of having an Estate, the sheer amount of room available. Now as for the rear seats, they're very cushiony soft, and one thing that really does stand out in comparison to its competitors, it's just really comfy to sit at the back of the cabin, which isn't the same that could be said about other Estates or let's say SUVs. There's plenty of legroom and headroom, and I'm just under 6 foot. I have no issues whatsoever, and I don't feel hemmed in either. Now if you don't have a fifth occupant, and yes, it will seat 5 people if you want because there's 5 seat belts, you can bring down the compartment over here and have it as an armrest. It also does reveal 2 cup holder spaces. Now at the front, it's equally comfortable, be it for the driver or the passenger, where both seats can be adjusted. In the exclusive model, which we've got on review, you've also got electronically adjustable driver's seat, which is again a little bit of a rarity, specifically at this price point, where a lot of its competitors will aim for either a semi-electronic and manual adjustment or a fully manual adjustment altogether. And now we get on to driving, and the first thing I want to talk about is actually cabin noise. Now when you're at a standstill, you're not going to hear anything because, well, it's an all-electric powertrain. Now if you were to set off and if you're on the motorway, you will hear a little bit of tyre noise creeping in. There is also the all-electric sound, so to speak, which is portrayed from the outer part of the vehicle, and you can hear it a little bit inside the vehicle as well. It's very much reminiscent of MG's other cars. I just find it ironic. When I talk, there's sometimes other cars that I'm referencing that literally pass by. Honestly, that's not planned, but yes, there was an MG ZS EV that was passing by, and it's the same thing that I noticed when it came to the ZS EV. It has this kind of like whooshing sound that you can hear at low speeds. Now, one of the joys of driving an Estate is the fact that it's very familiar to those people coming from a hatchback or a saloon. It doesn't have a high riding height unlike an SUV, and yet you feel perfectly secure and very much, well, with fantastic visibility. Speaking of which, the visibility of the MG5 EV is fantastic. There's no issues at the front, at the sides as well. And when it comes to parking, you've also got a rear view camera that comes included as standard, making parking a breeze and just all that a little bit easier. You have also got parking sensors as well to aid you with some audio cues as well. Now that's all well and good, but what about when it comes to actual riding comfort? Well, as we're in inner city commutes over here, I must say that the suspension setup is fantastic. Yes, you do feel the odd bump and pothole, but really, in reality, it's just pretty smooth. Of course, it's not going to beat active air suspension of the likes of the Audi e-tron, but truthfully, I just really like what MG have done. Better still, it's also firm enough that if you were to go at speed on country roads, what you'll find is the car itself is very comfortable to drive. You don't have too much seesawing effect, and the kind of body roll is kept to a minimum, which is again a little bit of a rarity in SUVs, and when it comes to Estates, the same could be said. Of course, unless you go for something like the BMW 330e Touring, which has very stiff suspension and therefore will be perfectly planted on the ground when you are lobbing it around country roads at, let's say, 50-60 miles an hour. Basically, MG have done the kind of perfect blend over here. Be it for inner city commutes or your country road driving, you're just going to find yourself very comfortable when you're coming to this car. Now, from the exterior, as I mentioned before, it's not quite the most appealing car, at least in my opinion. It doesn't have that sporty edge to it, and despite that fact, its single mounted motor, which dispatches 115 kilowatts of power, actually is really fun to use. Because it's an all-electric powertrain, you've got 260 Newton meters of readily available torque, and furthermore, it gets from 0 to 60 miles an hour, at least according to my test using RaceLogic's V-Box Sport, in 7.55 seconds. In fact, in some respects, I feel like it's kind of like a sleeper car. You don't expect this car to launch to 60 miles an hour in under 8 seconds. You'd think it's a little bit of a lazy one, but that's really not the case, and it's just kind of a testament to what electric powertrains can do, specifically even at a cheaper price tag. Now, for you to get the most responsive feel from the accelerator pedal, you're going to want to lob it on sport mode. This can be activated via the levers that I talked about before in terms of just above the gear selector. Now, in sport mode, the accelerator pedal is super responsive. It actually took me by surprise as to how responsive it was. You'd almost think that you're in a sports vehicle for some reason. Now, one thing I don't like, however, is that each time you do step inside the vehicle, it defaults to the normal mode, which is a little bit lazier, and it is done to preserve a little bit of extra battery life. Now, you can flick the switch to eco mode, and that will further try and extend the battery life of the vehicle, as in battery range, should I say, in terms of driving range. And in this respect, the throttle response becomes quite mushy, to say the least. So it's just not as responsive as in sport mode. But this is very much the case with any sort of vehicle out there, be it ICE-based vehicles or all-electric ones. Now, next to the driving mode selector, you have also got a kinetic energy recovery system lever. And by default, each time you step inside the car, very much like the driving mode, it does default to level 2. I would have wished again that it saves your last driving mode, and that's not quite the case with the ZS EV, nor is it with the MG5 EV. Now, in terms of level 1, it's the equivalent of coasting. Level 2 gives you a little bit of extra braking, and level 3 is a little bit harsher. It's still not as harsh as the likes of the Nissan Leaf, which truly give you a one-pedal driving approach. So in my case, I actually preferred driving it in level 3, and actually would have liked it to be a tad bit harsher to really allow me to drive with one pedal only, specifically in inner city commutes. Now, why would you want to enable level 3? Well, that's for you to recoup energy back into the battery pack. More specifically here, we've got a 52.5 kilowatt hour battery, which is available in both the Excite and exclusive trims. Now, the battery itself is claimed to run for around 214 miles on the WLTP standard, where actually in TotallyEV's tests, what we found is that the car actually runs for around 188 miles. That's a mixture of motorway, city driving and country roads, and driving with all the bells and whistles enabled. Infotainment, climate controls, all of that is enabled. We don't disable that because we don't believe that people should be driving with absolutely everything disabled in order to get the most amount of battery. Of course, you might do that, but we like to just test it in terms of a normal person driving, trying to get a kind of average range. So 188 miles is actually pretty impressive, because if you compare it to other all-electric vehicles out there on the market, there aren't many that at this price point can really compete with the MG5 EV, and that makes it one of the longer range EVs on the market, and for the price, probably one of the best. Now, with it being an electric vehicle, it's no surprise to know that it has got 2 charging inlets, and these are found under the MG logo at the front of the vehicle. The CCS port will deliver up to 50 kilowatts of input via a DC rapid charger that you'd find on the highway, for example, and this will give you around 0 to 80% charge in roughly 50 minutes. If you were to opt for the Type 2 port, which is slower and therefore delivers charge at 7 kilowatts, expect to go from 0 to 100% in roughly 8.5 hours. So you'll want to make sure that you're planning your journey, specifically if you don't have access to a DC rapid charger. Now, the main thing that actually lets down the MG5 EV, specifically in comparison to the ZS EV, is the lack of safety systems that come bundled as standard. In fact, there are no actual options to add additional safety features. For example, there's no adaptive cruise control, there's no lane keep assistance, there's no emergency front assist, there's no rear cross traffic alert, and there's no blind spot assist, which would have been a real good inclusion. Here, these features, which are included as standard or in the exclusive model on the ZS EV, would have been nice to see included on the MG5 EV. Instead, all you have got is essentially cruise control, which basically does the job as you might expect. As for the Euro NCAP testing, at the time of making this video, it hasn't been tested, so I can't comment as to how it is in terms of crash testing. But if we're basing it off the ZS EV, which achieved 5 out of 5 stars by Euro NCAP, one could only hope that the MG5 EV has the same sort of similar safety features, and it might lose a few marks when it comes to the assisted technologies, for example blind spot assist, which adds a few extra notches into Euro NCAP's testing methodology. And so this all leads me on to my verdict. What do I make about the MG5 EV? Well, quite frankly, its exterior design, it's not really up to my taste, and in terms of the interior, it could do a little bit of a refresh from its technology implementations and even the safety features, which seem to be a little bit lackluster. But otherwise, the car is fantastic. It's very fun to drive. It's also easy with great visibility. It's practical. It's got large boot space. Of course, it is an estate after all. And furthermore, it's affordable at £24,500. Be it for an all-electric powertrain or not, this car is great value for money. As a result, I can't really see anything wrong with buying this car. In fact, I can see myself buying it myself. And as a result, I would give this car the Best Buy award. But do let me know in the comments below if you agree or disagree with my opinion. Very much intrigued to hear your thoughts. And of course, if you like this video, give it a like, subscribe to see more from the channel, and favourite and share as it always helps the channel grow. I've been Chris from TotallyEV. Take care of yourselves, and goodbye.